Okay, so we're going to go ahead and get started. My name is Dr. Kalfani. My class there, I hope you all are taking plenty of good notes. This is the State of Black Writers Symposium, the 11th State of Black Writers Symposium. And we're here today, we're going to have a great time talking about youth writers, young writers. They look at me and say, I ain't that young. But you're young compared to the rest of us who was up here.
You say so.
So we have two wonderful authors here. They're going to tell you about their books, about their journeys. This is the 11th annual. We just had two panels this morning. The first one was a group of authors and professors, and the next one here was on journalists. We had some looking at the black press as writers, and so then today this session here is going to focus on folks who are out there writing, doing their own thing, and trying to extend the envelope of what it means to be a writer. And so we're going to ask them some probing questions to see what's in their mind, what's going on, and to talk about the art of writing and how does it, as independent writers, how do you get your stuff out there? What some of the challenges are? As opposed to someone, as an academic writer, I have academic presses that publish the stuff that I write for the most part, but I'm familiar with self-publishing and having to do more grassroots type of marketing. I've done that as well, and so it all involves a lot of work. So without further ado, though, we're going to have them to introduce themselves and to tell you a little bit about. We'll just take a brief minute first and introduce yourself. Tell what your name is and why you write, all right? And then we'll get into the more in-depth questions. Good stuff.
Okay. Hi everyone, my name is Caitlin Simmons. I am a Newark citizen. I was born and raised here. A Rutgers graduate, undergraduate and graduate student. So I write because I enjoy it. I've been writing since I was a child. I would mostly write poetry and short stories. And then when I got into high school, I was joining the school newspaper, and I would continue to write. I got the idea of wanting to be an author, a full-time author, when I was in high school. However, when I got into college, I kind of realized that, I probably wouldn't be able to make a living as a writer, so I got into biology, and then I was like, no, I don't want to get into biology. I'm steadfast. I want to be a writer. So I switched to English and journalism, and then after I started discussing with my counselor before I graduated, she was like, well, journalism is really difficult to get a job within journalism. A lot of my journalism students in the past would come back to me asking me for references. They really can't find jobs, so you might want to look into a different direction, Caitlin. So I was like, all right, then I'll get into UX writing, and that's what I'm doing now. Basically, writing for the user. I got my data science master's when I finished my undergraduate with journalism and English, and then after that, I just started doing UX writing as a career. But I still wanted to be a writer, so I still continue to write. My novels, one is called Spiraling, and the other is called The Empath. So essentially, I had the idea of writing both of them. They both have Black female characters who are strong but also flawed. My idea of writing Spiraling was from an incident that happened a few years ago with missing Black women and girls in DC. It hadn't gotten a lot of coverage and investigations going into it, and that really was upsetting for me. So what I decided to do was kind of write a book around it, and it basically inspired the plot for Spiraling. And then The Empath is essentially a book about someone going through guilt and then finding redemption, another young black female character, and just kind of how she heals from mental health. And I think mental health is a huge issue within the Black community that's not really discussed. So I wanted to kind of see, write about mental health from the point of view of a Black female. So thank you for having me at this event. And yeah.
Thank you.
All right, hello everyone, good afternoon. My name is Aziza Kabibi, and I am a self-published author, but I also graduated with 2 bachelor's degrees. Well, Essex County College I received an associate's degree in journalism here, and then I went on to William Patterson University and I received 2 bachelor's degrees, one in media productions and the other one in broadcast journalism. I love writing. It's an expression for me, and for me it's conjuring, it's creating stories, but not only that, manifesting your thoughts and feelings and bringing them into reality. The reason why I write, my father was a music video director. His most well-known work is Killing Me Softly by the Fugees. And I was homeschooled. My father homeschooled me and my siblings. But at the same time, he did not have a production company, so he trained all of his children to do all the production. And one thing that I was tasked to do was to write the video treatments for the videos that he produced and directed. So, but I did have a traumatic childhood because my father was a pedophile and a rapist, and he molested and abused me from the age of 8 years old all the way till I was 24. After escaping him, it resulted in 4 children. After escaping him, getting my children back from social services because they were taken from me in the process of escaping him, I saw writing as therapeutic. It was hard for me to get back to that because I did keep a diary of what my father was doing to me, and my brother gave it to my dad, and the consequences, I'm sure you can imagine, were harrowing. So I moved away from writing for a while, but then I started writing what had happened to me and how I felt about what happened to me as therapy. Then, in one of my communication classes right here in ECC, I decided to do a public speech on what happened to me. And when I did that, there was a survivor in the class, and she came up to me and confessed that it was the first time she had shared with anyone that her father had molested her as well. And I understood even more fully the power of telling stories, the power of sharing ourselves with the world. So I did publish my book, my memoir, which initially started as a therapeutic project. It's called Unashamed, the Life Tainted. I published it on Amazon through BookBaby, and it's gotten rave reviews. And I also have a podcast called Self-Published that really navigates the journey of the publishing process, especially from the perspective of someone who is writing a book that may be difficult to market because it's on such a sensitive topic matter.
Okay. So I was a youth once. And I didn't write anything when I was a youth. And so I commend you both, and thinking about the journeys that you've gone through and the ways you get to the stories. I got through my writing through academia, so my writing journey was different. So thinking about how you mentioned your writing was cathartic. Do you feel as though the writing of that healed you, or was that the beginning of a healing?
I would say it definitely contributed to my healing. I can't necessarily say writing alone healed me because there's so many moving parts when it comes to the healing journey, but it definitely helped with the beginning. I would say the beginning of my healing was, of course, escaping my father, and then getting my children back, but just being able to write down my thoughts and feelings and then read it back to myself and really analyze how it impacted me and how it impacted my life. It was instrumental in my healing.
Okay. And you have one book or two?
Well, it was, okay, so Unashamed, Life Tainted, it is volumes 1 and 2.
That's right.
They were published separately, initially digitally, but then I combined them in a print version. Yeah,
okay,
so technically it's 2 books, but they were combined in a print version.
Understood, okay.
Yes.
And on your books, how far apart were the publishing?
I publish these each a year apart.
A year apart. Okay.
Yes.
And did you write the second one in that year?
Yes.
Wow. Okay.
Yes.
And for both of you, in terms of your writing process, did you or were you engaged in having an editor or editors read your things so that you know proofread it and copy editing? Because in the writing, in the book publishing field, there's multiple layers of editing, right? And so in academic books, for instance, we will first you got to shop it. You know, you write something, you got to shop it around, and then once you've shopped it around, you get an editor to say, yeah, well, I'll take it. And then once you get them the finished or mostly finished book, then they'll have a copy editor look at it. And then after a copy editor, they have a proofing editor look at it, right? And then you get stuff back in between. And then you get the last thing is what they call a blue line. And then you get that, and you get this. But when people self-publish, one of the challenges with a lot of self-publishers is that a lot of times you see a lot more. Not that other books don't have typos, but you have more because sometimes people don't understand all those layers that a book goes through, and then how many hands that a book is in. And so, how was your process? How were your processes?
That was one of my biggest issues. So I had both of my books professionally. I had both of my books professionally edited, and then I had beta readers also assist me. And I had even my friends and my family kind of read back to me. So I gave them the first early copies of my book, and they found quite a few errors in it. And I said, wow, when I was going through it, I didn't find those errors. And so that's when I decided to get it second professionally edited. I had to go through several rounds of editing, and then they sent it out to these beta readers who, would give me their opinions both back on the grammar, the diction, the overall plot and stuff, give me back their feedback. And that helped a lot, but I definitely would say it was a lot of money out of pocket to get and doing it on your own efforts to get things edited. So I did have to, since you mentioned a bunch of layers that you had to go through. So I felt like that was essentially I did have to go through those things. I did have to continuously get this edited until I felt that it was on par with something that would have been traditionally edited. So I would say just kind of going through that journey was definitely difficult for a self-published author, but I do think the final copy of my books have been edited to the best of my ability.
Okay.
So for me, I actually initially tried to go the traditional publishing route. I did contact many literary agents, sent them samples of my work. And the feedback that I got back was that at the time when I was doing that, which I believe was 2012, 2013, they did not know how to market me. So because, this was before the Me Too movement had become very popular and the Time's Up movement, and there were people speaking out about things like domestic violence and gender-based violences. The industry just had decided, or the feedback that I get, the work was beautiful, the work was amazing, but we don't know how to market this because it's so sensitive.
Mm-hmm.
So I decided to go self-publishing route, and I went through professors right here at ECC. I did have friends who were in publishing who read it as well, went over. I hired an editor. That went all kinds of crazy. I talk about it in my podcast, Self-Published, and I did pay an editor as well because I did realize that because the work was so personal, I was so close to it, my eyes were seeing something completely different. But interestingly enough, even with as many professional editors that I went through, they were so engrossed in it, they still missed mistakes. They still miss mistakes. So I read my book now and I'm like, oh Lord. But I do see it as well, and more professionally, well, not professionally, but mainstream work. I do still see grammar and kind of typos. But yeah, I went through so many because I had a good idea of what the publishing process was like. So.
Mm-hmm. Okay, good. I think that's interesting for people to know because sometimes people think, oh, I can do X, Y, I'm just go publish it. I'll be done, right? I want to ask you. I was trying to get to this question in the first panel, but we didn't get to it. So I'm going to take the venture to do so now. What is your take on this? And I did 2 panels on it. But what is your take on AI in writing and how that whether it's in images or in the text body itself? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, that's really okay. So, in my position, my job as a UX writer, they're already like trying to implement.
Let me stop you real quick. Does anybody here know what a UX writer is? Okay. What do you mean by UX writer?
So, user experience writer.
And what is that?
Yeah. If you've heard of UX design, basically the design layout for apps or websites. So they would do the designs and all the writing, the content you would see on it is something the UX writer would do. So like the pop-up messages, error messages that pop up, menus, menu bar tabs, all of that with content writing on it. So the menu tab that says menu, a UX writer wrote menu. Basically that.
So when we think we have a chat person we're chatting with,
Yeah.
it's you. Or a script you wrote.
Yeah.
Okay.
So you can see like how easy they would say like an AI could do that job as a UX writer, and that's what I've been kind of dealing with now. Like as a UX writer, it's been sort of being implemented. Like they're saying, is UX writing going to be obsolete now because of AI? But the thing is that with UX writing, it entails like getting in the shoes of the user and also kind of like, you're essentially writing for the user, and that involves like emotion, and that's something that a machine could never do. So I would say this applies similarly to writing and being an author. Like it takes creativity, it takes ideas, coming up with ideas, it takes experiences, and so I don't think a machine could ever do that. I think it can mimic already existing ideas and creativity from humans, but I don't think that it could ever produce them themselves. So I'm not worried about AI taking over. I do worry about like people who, are not really serious about writing. There's, people that just kind of want to put together a book. They might ask AI to write a book for them, and essentially their AI is scraping kind of content from other writers and putting together this book that essentially is like plagiarized. And so that is what I'm worried about more in the publishing and writing field. But I think for traditional writers, we have our creativity, we have our ideas, we have our experiences, and we use our minds and stuff to write these books. We pour our hearts into it, and I just never think that AI could ever compete with something like that. So I think people will always appreciate that aspect of writers, and so I don't really think that writers have anything to worry about in that aspect.
So I have to agree with Ms. Simmons on a lot of points. I don't think that AI will replace the creativity of humans because we do. There are things about us that we can't comprehend, we don't understand, and that goes into the creative process. However, as a self-published writer, you're essentially an entrepreneur. And I do have to say that I have found AI very useful for some of the more mundane tasks like constructing emails or maybe a blurb or a bio for a website or some form of news outlet. And I mean, I have been on television numerous times, and I get bombarded with requests for a truncated bio or some kind of blurb or perspective on something. And I have used AI to start that piece of work and then build from there. But as far as writing like entire books, I don't think that it will ever replace writers. Maybe children's books, because I do know a few people that are using it now to write basic rhyming children's books, so I can understand that.
Would you be willing to read something from one of your books?
Yes.
Cool.
Which one?
Whichever one you choose.
Okay.
And I'm going to ask you to do the same next if you want.
Do I have it?
If not, it's okay. If you don't have it, you can maybe talk about your blog.
Sure.
All right, so this is chapter 8, and this is from the perspective of one of the characters, named Corey, and she's essentially a 19-year-old art student. So, I had met Mrs. Willow in high school. She was a quirky, spunky, funny, and passionate artist. She was also my favorite art teacher in the 10th grade. Along with Aunt Jeanette and Madeline, she is one of the people I'm closest to in my life. Mrs. Willow was a divorced, red-haired, and tiny woman. She shrieked when she got excited and was always on the go. She had colorful tattoos of flowers and butterflies all along her arms. The moment I had stepped inside of her classroom and laid eyes on her, I had known I was going to love her. She was the one that encouraged me to paint happy, blissful portraits. Corey, I remembered her telling me, you're so talented and dedicated. The first one here and the last to leave. Thanks, Mrs. I had started to say, but she cut me off. But your paintings are so dark, so sad, and melancholic. Why do you paint that way? I had hesitated for a few seconds. I had never told anyone about what was truly going on inside my head. Not my parents, not Madeline, and definitely not the lousy school counselor all students were supposed to go to when we had issues. But I liked Mrs. Willow and knew she could be trusted since she had been consistent in my life from the time I met her. I paint how I feel, what I'm feeling, what I think, and what I'm going through. I told Mrs. Willow. Have you talked to your parents, Corey? She had asked in concern. No, I had responded, and I'm not going to. She didn't question me on that, as if she understood. We both stood staring at my painting. Tell me, Corey, she had continued, eyeing my painting. Tell me what it's about. Describe it to me. It's a painting of a girl on her bed, under the covers, asleep. Her afro puffs were poking out from under her hands, were pulled down, and her hands were pulled down on either side of the sheets. Black tones of gray and white sketched the outline of the painting. Dark blues and deep purples were used as well. The atmosphere was dark, and the girl did not appear to be peaceful. It was as though she was forcing herself to fall asleep.
Thank you.
All right.
By the way, Aziza's name is the same as my daughter's. My oldest daughter's name is Aziza.
So you can imagine how he would point me out in class. Okay, this is chapter 2. It's called Night Dreams and Daymares. Looking down at my feet in the tepid water, I enjoy the feeling of the fine sand compacted under my arches. As I close my eyes and inhale deeply, the smell of the salt and seaweed from the ocean reminds me of home in another life. It's dusk and slightly dark on the beach. I notice how beautifully serene the energy is here at this time of day. So still and silent with only the sound of the waves. I feel like I'm the only one here until the kick in my belly reminds me that I am not alone. I open my eyes and look down first to my round, voluptuous stomach, then second, past it down into the water. I think I see a shadow moving around my feet. Something brushes the tendon just above my left knee. I want to run to shore, but instead I freeze in my spot. The water on the reef is as clear as glass, but the growing darkness requires me to bend a little to see better what looks to be circling me. I notice 3 flat triangular-shaped creatures with long tails swimming around my feet. I know what kind of fish these are. I just can't remember the name of them for the life of me. You need to come on, it's getting dark. My father's voice harshly invades the moment. I'm so mesmerized and intrigued by my visitors that I ignore him and stand thinking for a moment as the strange fish continue to circle my slightly swollen ankles. That's it. That's what they are. Manta rays. But wait, I ask myself, don't manta rays sting? I see the figure of my father coming closer to me. Suddenly I feel more afraid of his approaching silhouette as it gets bigger and darker with every step than I am of the risk of the manta ray's sting. I try to move from my spot, but I'm stuck. I can turn, but I can't go anywhere. I look off into the sea and wish that I could walk across the ocean and not come back. My baby in my belly responds with a somersault as if to say, Yes, Mommy, let's go. I looked down thinking of the manta rays again, only to see them hurriedly swim away, startled by the disturbing splash my father's footsteps make. Then I realized there were no splashes, just a figure gliding closer to me, getting bigger and darker. I begin to panic for fear the gray darkness approaching will take me over. Then I hear a noise. It sounds like a muffled blender. At first it's a little annoying, but as the sound gets louder, the noises become deafening and completely drowns out any other sound from the beach. Where is that coming from? I can see my father's dark figure spread across the still waves of creeping along the line where the water meets the sky. I can no longer make out the shore or determine what direction it could be in. The baby inside me begins to respond to the panic it senses from my racing heartbeat. I close my eyes, trying not to see what is in front of me. I cover my ears, attempting not to hear what is around me, but all of my efforts are of no use. No matter how flat against my ears I try to press the palms of my hands, I can't seem to escape the noise. It's as if it's coming from inside of my head and not from around me. Turn on the light over there, please. My curiosity of the unfamiliar voice forces me to open my eyes. Mommy, where are you? I want Mommy to suction me, Coco says through the gurgle of the secretions in the back of her throat. I'm in the hospital room, curled up on the recliner. I'd fallen asleep on the chair and had been dreaming. As my sleep-blurred vision adjusts to the fluorescent lighting in the hospital room, I can make out two figures in yellow paper robes and white face masks. So I read that part specifically because that is my father delivered my last daughter on a beach in Florida. And today is the anniversary of my daughter's death. She passed away in 2010. So, forgive my emotions.
Okay, you're right.
But that's it.
So the one thing I want to share from that is you see how emotive writing can be. So she talked about it being cathartic, right? Meaning that it can be healing, but there's a saying that says that regardless of your religion, that the tears that we cry, that the Creator gave us tears to cry so that we can cleanse out any negative energy. We can cleanse out anything. And so then the salt that you taste, the emotive experience that you feel is the cleansing and the healing. The tears themselves, you really think of it, it's really interesting to think of the symbolism of the, what is that bird called? The phoenix, right? The phoenix is a bird that can burst into flames, but it talks about the tears from the phoenix can be healing. And so when you think about that kind of cathartic level of what the power is, so the lesson of the healing is that even your own tears can be healing for you. And sometimes we're compelled to think that we have to hide them, that we have to can't let them fall. How many of you sat there somewhere and you struggled to make sure that little bitty drop of water don't fall out your eye, right? Nobody can see this, right? And that's because we're conditioned to think that doing so shows what? Weakness, right? The challenge is that, is it not okay to be weak sometimes? Right? We all have weaknesses, but we try to mask the fact that we have weaknesses in the face of weaknesses demonstrating that you are weak, and so that you are weak as opposed to you had a moment of weakness, right? So I think that's the key here, and I'm coming to your hand, is that it's about a moment that you experience to help you get to the next moment. And sometimes when we don't have those moments, we don't allow those tears to come and heal and cleanse us, that we're stored up with those emotive energies. And that's why in ancient Egypt or Kemet, they had this thing called Ma'at. And Ma'at was a scale of balance. And it suggests that at the time of your demise, your heart was weighed against a feather. And if your heart was heavier than a feather, then maybe you need to go back through because some less lessons that you didn't learn in the process, right? And so I would suggest that those tears, as painful as they are to allow to come out, that maybe in fact that those tears balance out your heart. So the other thing in terms of being youthful authors, my question to you is how do your peers respond to where you are, and do you get support and or help in the process of your writing from your peers as you're going through things? I will start with the easiest.
My peers, wow. So, Dr. Kalfani is being very kind by calling me a youthful author. I am 47 years old. So my peers in the age group are my age and older. And I would say they're supportive for the most part. However, because of the sensitivity of my topic matter, specifically dealing with unashamed, I tend to have people, friends and associates, definitely family, shy away and not serve, be a support system in even my professional process with publishing and writing. But I also write fiction. I'm also working on a couple of screenplays, a short film. So I do write other things, and I find that friends and family are more supportive of those works because they don't hit so close to home. But my children are super supportive. So, I feel like that I am fully supported because I have them.
I'm the only writer in the family, and then even throughout high school and I guess in college, the people that I would associate with weren't really into reading and writing. So essentially, I don't think I had too much support in that aspect. I feel like they would acknowledge that I was a good writer and I liked reading. And they thought that was that was nice, but it wasn't until I started actually writing books and then producing it and promoting them. It was like, oh wow, Caitlin. I would see old friends on Facebook saying how how cool that was and how much effort and time and stuff that took. And it's amazing that I was able to write a book and publish it. I would say people acknowledge that I'm a great writer again, but it's kind of they didn't really care that much. It's great that you can write. I found that most of the support I got was when I joined book clubs and groups online on Facebook tailored towards young writers, young Black female authors, writers of Newark and stuff. That's when I got a lot of support from strangers and also writers, people that were interested in my books. My parents, of course, they were supportive in the sense that they liked that I was pursuing a passion of mine. They knew it wasn't something that I could make a living off of right now, which is why my mom was kind of you need to focus more on UX writing and content design and stuff, and you can write, but write on the side. So I would say she was as supportive as as long as you continue doing your job in the corporate world and supporting yourself, you're free to write and stuff. So I would say on the outside of my teachers growing up would be supportive of my writing, and the book clubs and the people that I would meet. More intimate relationships with friends and family weren't that supportive, but I find them becoming more and more supportive as they can see my passion in it. When I explain to them what inspired me to write this, when I talk about my own feelings and emotions and how I incorporated that into the main characters in my book, I find them being more interested and supportive of me.
Can I just add to that
Yes.
really quick, Dr. Kalfani? I do think that when it comes to peer support, to me they're the original audience, so it's really about what they're interested in. And I do find, thinking back, I've had a lot of people that I know be supportive more of my poetry and also my science fiction writing. So I do think that it's because that just happens to be their interest, which I think is a good start for any author, self-published or not, to just understand how the audience sees things and how they see your work for marketing purposes.
Okay, great.
You have a question?
Oh, we have a question online.
How do I cope? So one, my healing journey is very long. I'm still on it. But one thing that I do, aside from writing, I am very spiritually aware. I take care of my health. I understand the combination of spiritual healing in partnership with physical healing. So I am in the gym on a regular basis to get those endorphins going. Also, my commitment to my children has also contributed. But I also started a nonprofit called Precious Little Ladies Incorporated, and our mission is to combat child molestation, domestic violence, and sexual assault by strengthening the bonds between mothers and daughters. And I think my work, well, I know my work, I'm saying I know my work, being able to take what happened to me and transform it into something positive definitely has been a major factor in healing and in coping with grief. Now, the grief, I had to grieve the loss of my inner child, but I also had to grieve my daughter who passed away. And I think that it is just something that you have to work on consistently. And if you have the right tools and resources, and you know where you're going, and you know how to come back from those moments of grief, then that's a huge help. I think that's absolutely necessary to be able to go to your toolbox. And I do. I have my toolbox, and I am a great construction worker because I use them a lot.
I was, when you were saying that, one of the things that it made me think about is that, and I don't mean this as to kind of put you on the spot, but I think another spot that it seems as though to me that grief is really actually loss of a father, right? Because you didn't have a father, you had somebody who was labeled as your father, but really was almost a foreigner, right? And so then that may be another kind of component to think about. This man who was in your house, who was labeled as your father, but didn't act fatherly to you. And so, whether he has a lot of accolades or not, what was his relationship to you? I'm not asking you to answer this. I'm just saying to think about that kind of another traumatic piece. It's almost like, in some ways, you grew up, you could almost say, like almost your mother was a single parent, but you were with the man who was there, who was not there for you. And so, that's kind of another thought to think about the implication of that. And so we have a lot of different scenarios where young folks, and maybe not so young folks, go through these kind of traumatic experiences, because this is actually is much wider spread than maybe a lot of people think. And in writing would you advise somebody to write a book or poem? What other kind of cathartic thing might you advise if somebody else had an experience like this, without having to go too much in detail of your own thing, but how to think about survival, transformation, and things of that nature?
Yes, writing is a huge part, and I think if you speak to any mental health professional, they will tell you journaling is very important, because even in my experience, being able to read back on what happened to you, and it's a scary process. It is a scary process because you have to relive those experiences that you've probably been trying so hard not to even look at or address. So, doing that is important, because then the fact is that after you've experienced that trauma, you are a different person in many different ways. So you have to, from the person that you are now, look at what happened to you with these new eyes and acknowledge the fact that you do have new eyes. And doing that can be, yes, writing your own story, sharing it in poetry, doing fiction like Miss Simmons has, and also social media. Social media is huge now. I'm not, of course, for those, depending on where they are in their stage of healing, if they want to do something as public as sharing something with the world, but they can still do it indirectly. And one thing I find, and my social media following it's growing. I have, I believe, about 500,000 followers across different platforms, and I find that survivors watching my content then are inspired to share their own stories, whether that be in the comments, whether it be directly to me through direct messages. So and reading and watching content, watching films, I just think that media is really so important to the healing process for a lot of traumas that people are experiencing, not just sexual trauma, not just domestic trauma, but different traumas in general. It's just a cathartic process.
Yeah.
Communication is important.
Yeah, I mean, that could work even as far as like police brutality issues, right? So other places where that same thing could play itself out. I wanted to ask you kind of differently, Ms. Simmons. So you were the other day selling books at Rutgers. How is the marketing process and experience going for you? And what do you see as, how would you take that differently if you started with your first book tomorrow? What would you do with the knowledge that you have now? What would you do differently?
Okay, so your first question, how is it going? I would say it's going. It's going. When I finished my first book, well, first of all, let's go even further back than that. When I was writing them, I was super optimistic and naive about how I would become this big author and how easy it would be to promote and sell it. Like all I gotta do is post online that I wrote this book and it's about this, and people would be interested and just automatically go on Amazon and purchase it. Like that was my general idea. I would just do some promotions and then people would come running. I was very naive at the beginning of this. The whole process of putting this together, of writing it, of getting it edited, and so I learned very quickly when I finished writing Spiraling, my first novel, how incredibly difficult it is to promote and market something when you have no connections, when you have limited funds, when you don't know where to start. And it really was it was very difficult. I was lucky to have a friend that was in the, he had pretty much put together a book for another author, so he offered to put it together for me. He did the cover design to put it all together. He had it uploaded to Amazon. And then, the marketing after that was just left to me. He helped post on Facebook and on social media platforms for me and for his following. And, I tried to, get friends and family to also, spread the word that my first book was out. But I have to say, within the first months, I sold, the vast majority of my sales came from friends and family. It was, and I was happy for that, but I knew they were doing it because, they wanted to support me. So I would say I was very discouraged after that. After that, I just went right into writing my next one and said, let me not worry about that. I can't focus on that. Let me just continue putting out work. When this came out, I was like, okay, what can I do differently this time? Because just the traditional route with having not a large following, how am I gonna get the word out that I'm a writer, I'm an author, I have something to say, and I think these are interesting stories that you would be you would love to read. And so I did the best thing I could do, which was buy them in bulk and then go and spread the word. I went to several campuses. I went to Rutgers, both the one in Newark and then one in New Brunswick. I went to Princeton. I drove all the way down to Princeton University to also try to sell them there. I went to Kane University the other day with a friend, and I would just promote them. People come up to me, I tell them what it's about, whether it's mental health, microaggressions, racism, self-help, all of that is the themes within this book. And I'd say, if you're interested in that, I did, warn them that it could be a little deep. It could be, it could go on the deep side and make you uncomfortable. So, fair warning with that. They do have a lot of isms in this book. But sexism, racism, all that is themes in these books. I let them know that. But I said this is a great book, and I told them about my journey and stuff, and I'm just out here promoting it as a self-publishing author. So I consider myself a starving author, the way an artist would consider himself a starving artist, essentially. It's very difficult. It was and it still is very difficult to get the word out without the support, the widespread, backing that a traditional publisher, maybe even an influencer or celebrity would have, instantly. They say I have a new book out, and it goes off the shelves. But I think it's teaching me a lesson. It's teaching me to be patient. It's teaching me to be persistent. I'm not giving up. I'm going to keep on putting the word out. I'm going to keep on selling. I'm going to keep trying to, network and meet people and hopefully, meet someone, I met you, I met you guys, so that's amazing. And I'm here talking right now, speaking to people, so that's great. Just getting more exposure and support. But I will say definitely to know that if you are self-publishing, it is a hard journey without the connections and support. So it's definitely, it's something to know before you get into it. If you think, you can handle it, if you can come through it, get through it, I definitely would recommend it. I chose self-publishing because I wanted full control over my writing. I knew that a lot of things that even the ending of my book, the twist in it, I felt like it probably wouldn't pass with an editor or an agent. They might, suggest that I make changes in my book, and I definitely don't want that. Everything in my book is authentic to me, and I want it to stay that way. So I wanted full control over everything I had in my books. So yeah, I would recommend self-publishing, but I also want to caution you that it comes with its challenges.
Can I respond just
Yes,
really
please.
briefly? I think that as an author in general, even if you have the backing of Simon and Schuster, you have to be multi-talented just because people don't read books as much anymore. So, you have to engage your audience in different ways. So that would mean, doing readings on social media, getting into TikTok, podcasts. For me, how I was able to get exposure is because I just started commenting on different articles that was written about my father. And I went in the comments and I commented a lot, correcting things, responding to people's questions, which now even on social media, that's the best thing that you could do as an influencer, as an author, anything, engage with your community, and it just helps the algorithm find you. So I just want to make that suggestion to you if you haven't done it already. And I was discovered by Katie Couric, and I think also, there was this professor that taught me something at this school called Essex County College, and he said that social equity is probably one of the most valuable things that you could have. And Dr. Kofani, when he said that, it just stuck to me. It stuck with me. So I go to events, I talk to people as much as possible, because you just never know who you're going to meet. So
You never know.
yes,
Right.
you never know.
And just like today, we had those journalists here, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so then you come to an event, and these are the top African American journalists in this area, right? Two of them worked for Amsterdam News for over 20 years. Was the editor for Amsterdam News for over 20 years, and the other was the editor, worked there for 18 years. And then one is one of the top award-winning photographers, and then the other one was a businessman who owned his own media company. Then you had this brother over here who owns his own publishing house, right? Global Patriot News. And you had another sister who was here, Ms. Ruby Shrivers, who has a podcast, who does a lot of stuff. So you never know who's in the audience. And similar to the comment that you say, one of the things, the twist on that I say now, is that your network determines your net worth. Your network determines your net worth. And I don't mean net worth in terms of how economists say it, right? They're going to talk about your balance sheet. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about the value of your net worth. To me, means the value of your relationships. And so if we think about that, then that means that your network, you have to work it. The word work is in network. So if you're just taking a card, that's not a network. You have to call somebody. You have to engage them. You have to meet with them, have lunch or a coffee or a tea or a cup of water or something, and engage them. And so as the more you're engaging folks, you continue on your grind, keep writing, I think the more powerful the process is that you're going to do and how things are going to play themselves out. I want to take maybe one more question. We have a question. Do we have any questions in here in the audience? No questions in the audience? Okay, we'll take the one online, and we're going to take a question from Brother Simon, and then we'll go from there. Go ahead. So for me, originally I went to undergraduate school. I was at the University of California, Santa Cruz back in the 80s, and I went there to be a computer engineer. It was the first computer engineering in 1985, the first computer engineering program in the entire United States. So, you can imagine that the computers were in their very early stages of development in '85. And so I was like, yeah, I'm getting ready to be on the cutting edge. Silicon Valley is less than an hour away from where I was. And I was saying, I'm getting ready to run this thing. And then two things. One was that I had the classes, they all wanted to be at 8 o'clock in the morning. And I was like, yo, this is problematic. And then the other thing was that I took, I think, two sociology classes, and I got a bug. And that bug was, it gave me the tools to begin to start analyzing the problems going on in our community. And it helped me to see that I could come up with solutions to solving problems for people of African descent, and that there were solutions. And part of the solution was learning how to articulate what the problems were, and where they came from. So I married history and sociology, and so sociology is a tool for me. And so from that point, I decided I was going to, sociology became really interesting to me. And then I thought I was going to, because I also thought about going to becoming a teacher, like at a grade school. So I was actually taking classes in sociology of education, and then I took education classes, because I thought I wanted to be an educator. And then I decided somewhere along the line I didn't want to do that either. And so I just continued my sociology, and I just majored in sociology. I got my first degree in sociology, and then I graduated, and I worked for about 3 years, and I said, you know what, it's time to go back to school. And then I applied broadly all across the country. And I was fortunate because I got, they paid for me to come out to Philadelphia, and they paid for a hotel room, they paid for the flight for me when they were recruiting me to go to grad school. And it was surprising that they did, because that was my first choice, University of Pennsylvania, Ivy League school. And so I was like, yeah, that's where I want to go. And the person I wanted to work with was going to be my advisor. And so all the stars were lining up. I came out, I went to NYU, Temple, Howard University, University of Pennsylvania, and I checked out all those schools. I liked a lot of what they had to offer. I applied to like 11 or 12 schools. I got admitted to about 4 or 5, and then I got a full academic scholarship from the University of Pennsylvania, and I took that, and so then the rest was history, and I still, but I'm a Pan-Africanist, and sociology is a tool to help me to do things from a Pan-Africanist perspective. Helps me to come out and figure out how to solve problems around the world for African people. And so that's what I do. I travel around the world, thankfully, and I have the responsibility of helping folks find solutions to the places that they're in, and that's what I do. That's what sociology is the tool for me to do.
So do you think this was your purpose in life to do?
Yeah, I believe I'm on my purpose. And that purpose is to push the envelope on the problems that our African people are confronted with. And so that's what I do. I find the places where they are. I write about those things. I go to rallies and protests, organize rallies and protests about those issues. I work with politicians. I work with traditional leaders. I work with artists and lots of folks to bring solutions to those kinds of problems. And the more we do that, the more successful we are at it. I think that we're accomplishing what we're supposed to be doing. So I feel accomplished in that regard. But I know that I'm just scratching the surface, and so now is my time to. So I've been educating other students because I want you all, like Aziza, right? Here's one of my students who's out now. She's been out at Essex for 10 plus years.
Was it in 2015?
2015. Oh, okay, yeah. She's one of my. No. She came in a little bit later. So I've been at Essex for almost 20 years now. So I had my first students were and graduated in 2006. I have students who are who teach here at the college, who are professors. I have students who are lawyers and doctors and politicians and all kinds of stuff. And my first classes I taught were all the way back in 1988 at the University of California, Santa Cruz. So I've been teaching at the collegiate level for a long time. I taught at Seton Hall and Fairleigh Dickinson and University of Pennsylvania and University of California, Irvine, and University of California, Santa Cruz. And so I have students all over the place, and once in a while I run into them and they're like, "Oh, I remember you were in mine." I was like, "Yeah, I remember you too." But I do remember Aziza, and I'm going to remember all of you in the class.
Thank you.
All right. We're almost we're really out of time, but I want the two of you to kind of give any closing statements about what you're, and do you have more books in your life? So do you have more books in your life, and any closing statements?
Well, yes, I do. I have a couple of books coming out of me. One though that I'm working on is called The Hump, A Guide to Getting Over It. It's more personal growth centered, so it really explores, how I was able to heal from what happened to me and give insight and tips on how others can do the same. What else? I mean, there's a lot of things in store. I can't talk about it right now. But yes, I also have my fiction. It is a novel. It is God, I can't think what it's called. But it's called Slumbering, and it's an interesting perspective, a science fiction on how the human race would be able to navigate social issues if we hibernated every year in order to conserve resources. So I'm getting good feedback for that as well.
Cool.
So I have a third novel I'm finishing. I have the third novel that I'm finishing up this fall, and I'm gonna work with the same guy to put them together, do the cover design for me, and then again upload them for Amazon. So this third novel is going to be another fiction novel, and it's kind of a psychological drama. Just very, very short plot is a family, a couple and their son. They live the idyllic life, and a little girl comes up to the door, and she is all disabled. She claims that the woman is her mom, and the woman knows that that's not her daughter. But the strange thing is that everyone around her is saying, yes, that is your daughter. You had a kid back in college, and you gave her up for adoption, but the woman knows that that's not true. So the whole book is revolving around, like, why is everyone saying this? So it's a really kind of a psychological kind of thriller thing. But yeah, I'm finishing that up this fall, and I'm gonna have my friend get together again, do the same process. These are all available on Amazon. I'm gonna upload this third one to Amazon as well. I'm on Goodreads, I'm on Facebook, I'm on Twitter. So yeah, I am continuing the fight and journey to be this self-published author, and just to hopefully get my stories and my books out there.
Okay, great. Simon, did you have a quick question you want to give him, or are you good?
I wanted to ask, they've mentioned in passing, but how are they using their experiences and their books to impact Blacks outside of America?
Mm-hmm.
So for me, my reach is pretty far. It's global. My organization, we have provided services to people in South Africa, Tobago, and Haiti. So virtually, I have to say that there were some goods that came out of the pandemic, because a lot of our services, while they were focused in Essex County, we expanded them virtually, and it reached, all over the world. I was on a television show called Evil Lives Here, which has been translated into, I think, 20 different languages, and I get people from Nigeria, from Iran, from everywhere reaching out to me. So I do think that the topic matter is global, it is universal, it affects both men and women, and the fact that I speak out about it, and I speak about it candidly, then does kind of transcend any divides that we may have culturally and racially. But as far as Blacks in particular, I do speak heavily on the approach that law enforcement and our relationship with law enforcement, and how that affects the rate of reporting from the Black communities. And I speak specifically on that on my YouTube channel, on my Facebook, on my TikTok, on my Instagram, which are all Aziza Kabini, by the way. I am blessed to be able to get a unique enough username to have it everywhere. And that's where I do it. As a Black woman, I am greatly affected by the plight of the Black community, and also my experience through with the techniques that my father used were very much in line with the oppressor. The way he had this mental and physical oppression on his family, and I identify a lot with the Black experience and with our experience dealing with slavery and oppression, because my father used a lot of those techniques, even though he educated us on it. But so that's how I do it.
Okay, cool. Last one.
Yeah, so one of the first women that actually brought my book was a Caribbean woman. So I was out selling them, and she came by and she was very interested in it. So I read her the plot of it. I told her like what inspired me was essentially dozens of missing Black women and girls in DC that were going missing, and then there was no investigation, no widespread investigation about all these women and girls, and very little coverage. And so I told her about that, and she was the first person that brought my book when I was outside selling them. I think both of the topics, this spiraling, it talks about like microaggressions, racism, navigating the world in corporate or just blue collar jobs as a woman, as a man as well. There's several characters, men as well in the books, Black men as well. I think that even though the characters are Black Americans, this still could, this still speaks to Black people, whether they're in Africa or Caribbean or Europe, wherever they are. This speaks to like what we deal with in terms of just kind of trying to navigate the world as a Black person, and just kind of dealing with daily microaggressions and mental health. And this, the impact is definitely just like, it's all about mental health. It's all about mental healing, mental cleansing. It's about dealing with guilt, redemption, and all of that. And I think mental health is something that's definitely not talked about enough in the Black community. I think a lot of times generational trauma and stuff tends to kind of get in the way of having true discussions on it. And so I think that this is a great book for any Black youth. It's the main character, again, is a Creole Black girl with like Haitian roots and stuff. And so I think that in general, this is a great book for Black youth, male or female, to read and kind of like see that, whether, it's not ashamed in the Black community to talk about your mental health and to kind of like, I was just gonna say that both books are very relevant to the things that we deal with today as whether a Black youth, male or female, no matter what age. And so I think that, either whether inside you're a Black American, no matter where you are in the world, both these books I think would be very helpful towards you.
All right, thank you very much. Let's give them a round of applause, please. And I thank you all for online. Thank you for your questions, Najiba. And this is the end of the State of Black Writers Symposium for 2023. We're going to have some other folks for 2024. And I like the idea of having a youthful panel. We're going to make sure we incorporate that again next time around. And that's it for today. Thank you all very much. Peace and blessings.